The Canadian federal government has introduced new guidelines for its employees who want to use artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT on the job. Now, according to the Treasury Board President, Anita, these guidelines are to be put in place to ensure that the technology is being used responsibly. So for more on the guidelines, let's bring in CBC's Elizabeth Thompson. Elizabeth, this stuff is endlessly fascinating and confusing. So what exactly is the government doing?
Well, the government has realized that they're starting to get into the question of AI and starting to recognize its potential as a tool to try to help the way it does things. But a few years ago, they adopted a policy that tells government departments how they should do it. For example, that they should have an algorithmic impact assessment and things like that. And a few days ago, they introduced something specifically for employees to try to guide them as they try to work out this fascinating new world, this maze of AI, specifically generative AI. That's AI that's used to create content, things like ChatGPT, or using AI, for example, to do research for a briefing note or to inform a policy. Overall, the government says it has potential to improve the way the government does things, but it's also concerned that there are risks potentially involved, things like cybersecurity, things like privacy. Also, the biggest risk, though, that they're concerned about is bias, that sometimes, depending on who has constructed the algorithm, what kind of data it's been trained on, does it have a bias in there? Could it discriminate against certain people in Canada? Treasury Board President Anita Anand says that's something the government is going to be watching carefully. Here's what she had to say.
Purpose of these guidelines is to ensure responsible use of generative AI, and we will be monitoring to ensure that bias does not creep in if employees do go down the road to use generative AI.
Now, the guidelines also say that employees should be careful when using it for certain things, like, for example, communicating with the public on social media or assessing an application, someone who's applying for government benefits or government services. They also recommend transparency. So, for example, should you use a watermark on a picture or an image if you've created it with AI? Should someone know that AI has been involved in the research for a policy? Or if someone's communicating with the government, they have a right to know whether they're communicating with a human being or is that a chatbot on the other end of the line?
So naturally, when you're bringing in these sort of changes for the employees, the unions have a response. What are we hearing from them?
Well, the unions at this point are fairly cautious, in part because the government came out with these guidelines without actually consulting two of the largest unions, the Public Service Alliance of Canada and the Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada. Jennifer Carr is president of the Institute of the Public Service, Professional Institute of the Public Service. She would like to see clearer rules. She'd like to see go and no-go zones. She says the guidelines should also consider whether AI is always the best tool for a particular job. Here's what she had to say.
AI has enormous potentials when it comes to synthesizing, scientific data. Things that we had to do by hand can be done in nanoseconds by computers using AI. But if somebody is cut off of a benefit because there's no human interface, that's where we get concerned.
One of the union's other concerns is their members and their jobs. And Jennifer Carr is saying that if the government is going to start using AI and that it replaces the jobs currently being done by some public servants, that the government should retrain those public servants, upskill them, she said, and so they can adapt to the new reality where the government is regularly using things like ChatGPT to get the job done.